Welcome, welcome, wonderful souls. Welcome to Hey Boo, a witches podcast, where the mystical dances with the mundane, where the ethereal meets the earthly. We are your enchanting guides. I'm Meika Cooper, and I'm joined by my fellow seeker of the unseen, Kristen Shaffer.
Thank you for tuning in to Hey Boo. Our purpose? To illuminate the marvels of this moment, to unveil the enchantment woven into the fabric of everyday existence.
That's right, because in the tapestry of life, threads of magic are shimmering all around us. And as we venture forth, we've set a North Star ablaze in the sky to unite witches, lightworkers, and cosmic dreamers across the spinning globe.
Tune in as we dive into the cauldron of collective consciousness, as we traverse realms both seen and unseen.
Sing the magic, O seekers of the extraordinary. Together, we shall reveal, expose, and awaken the very essence that courses through your veins. The magic, the power, the light, it's all within reach.
If you feel those beautiful sixth sense tingles like we do, you've come to the right place to let your inner witch unfurl her wings. Let the wisdom of the moon guide your steps, and let the whispers of the universe ignite your spirit. Remember, you are magic incarnate, and this podcast is the incantation that calls it forth.
Where we unite as modern mystics, cosmic sisters, and as believers in the extraordinary. Where we illuminate the mundane with the radiance of the mystical.
Let's journey together across continents and constellations as we embrace the magic that weaves our stories together.
Are you ready to embark on this voyage, dear boos? The stars await, the cauldron bubbles, and the magic beckons.
Tune in,
Turn on, and let the enchantment begin. Welcome to Hey Boo.
Hey Boo.
Hey Boo, how you doing?
Good. It's kind of surreal. Meika and I experienced a ceremony together back in mid-August where this whole idea was concepted. So it's amazing that we're actually sitting here now, time activating this witch portal.
Oh, I just got the boo chills right then when you said that. This is so awesome that we're actually seeing this to fruition.
For sure. So I guess it wouldn't hurt to mention how we actually came into contact with each other, a cosmic connection, I'd like to say, in that, a friend of ours, Diallo, had introduced me to Meika because it was back in 2014, I lost my dad, and I was having a series of very spiritual connections with him that I was having not a hard time comprehending, but an urge to want to understand better. I went into this area of just seeking and taking a lot of the classes that Meika used to workshop for mediumship, psychic abilities, spiritual connection. So it was me reaching out to her, taking her classes that we first started developing a friendship. And I guess if there's anything you want to add, Meika, about that.
Yeah, well, we'll back up a little bit to the Diallo connection because that was weird in itself. It wasn't like just the meeting of Diallo was divine intervention for sure. So we were taking a landmark class, Kaleo and I, my husband, and we were supposed to get into groups. So Kaleo said, I'll be the leader. And then it was like a class of like 150 people. And then you were just supposed to gravitate towards whoever it was who said, I'm the leader. And then that was going to be your group. And I looked over, and out of 150 people, I spotted Diallo, and I was like, I hope he's in our group. I hope he's in our group. Didn't know him, didn't know anything about him, hadn't even heard like a word uttered from his mouth. I just felt like a sincere connection. And sure enough, he walks right up to Kaleo. I'm like, yes. So without that, we wouldn't have met. So that Diallo connection was so awesome.
I love it. And I met Diallo because we worked together in tech at Yahoo back in 2000. So from very different angles of our friendship to become together. One other thing I really want to call out is this incredible self-help awareness actualization program that Meika and her husband Kaleo have launched. And I can't express more gratitude for what it did for me in a time when I was looking for healing and just self-growth and development. And it's called Thrive Integration. You guys will have to check it out.
I want to say to everybody who's listening, all of you witches, all of you healers, all of you magical folk, trust in your magic, because in order to start that program, it took a total leap of faith, and it absolutely trusting in my intuition. I had a regular old job. I was an educator, and I started getting the calling to learn more about mediumship. And I started to follow that breadcrumb. And then my intuition so deeply said, you've got to quit. You've got to quit in the middle of the year, and you need to start leading meditation and mediumship classes. And I was like, oh my God, really, Spirit? That's so scary. But okay, I'll do it. You know, when you have that calling, and you cannot deny it when you know, you know. And I think so many of us out there have had our magic squashed, and we don't trust that we can actually create a beautiful life using our gifts. And so everyone thought I was crazy. Everyone thought I was so crazy to actually quit my job. I have 2 kids, and they thought you're crazy. You're going to quit your like regular steady job and go talk to dead people and teach people too. We're like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. But I did. And then that's another thing, that sometimes we get these intuitive hits and we're like, okay, this is my life's purpose. And then that breadcrumb leads to something else and leads to something else. It opens up another door and opens up another door. And that's what happened with me following that breadcrumb of mediumship, because it led to Thrive, the program that Kristen's talking about. So without following spirit, without following intuition, without trusting the spiritual gifts that are inside of all of us, and trusting that I could actually do that, because that's the scariest part. You know, I think we all go through imposter syndrome, because our gifts and our magic, they haven't been celebrated. They haven't been fostered. They haven't been given attention to. And for most of us witches out there, probably many people in your life shut you down. And so to step into that realm and that role and really be a leader with your magical abilities, at first you feel like the imposter. You feel like this isn't real. This isn't me. But it is. It's just that we haven't been. Why it feels like the imposter syndrome is because we're not used to being in that realm. We're not used to being in that space. And so it feels like, oh, but then once you step into it fully, it's like, of course, this is who I am. It feels so natural and so good. So that's part of how Kristen was talking about the Thrive program, was really just following those breadcrumbs, following the magic, following the whispers of spirit, and just trusting.
Yeah, I like to call them dangling carrots. I see them everywhere.
Mm.
One thing I wanted to add is like the societal conditioning for how you think you're supposed to be, what you're supposed to do, go to college, have a 9-to-5 job, sit behind a desk, all that. So it goes against internally this urge to do something else. And so to have the bravery to move beyond what is accepted in our world as what is a contributing member of society and making money and, you know, just all that. If you can sit with yourself and stop ignoring the messages that you know to be true. One of the things that I love that I embrace about myself is that my intuition is, and it always has been, very strong. I feel like we could dedicate a whole episode on that, because as you'll find, we'll get into it, just past experiences of like, well, how did I know that? And why did this happen to me? And these synchronicities that happen in life that are guided by your spirits, these experiences that your higher self only wants the best for you. So it's really getting away from the mindset of caring what other people think of you, and tuning in to how you actually feel about yourself and self-love, and allowing your own gift to illuminate.
Yes, I love it. I just feel like the more people who step into that changes the world. That creates
Absolutely.
magic in the world, because I think so many people are in that. Nothing wrong with a 9-to-5, but they're in the cubicle. They're driving in their car for, hours on end to get to a job, to work for somebody else that they don't like, that's not their calling, that's not their passion. And I just think that the more we can have the guts and the courage to step into that, man, the world would be such a joyful place, because we'd all be living our purpose. It just seems like a happy space.
Yeah. And I'm not poo-pooing the 9-to-5 either. Everything that we encounter in life is intentional. So even if it's not something you love to do and you're doing it to pay the bills, that's the contrast that you need to have the clarity. So everything is intentional, no matter where you are in your life. And it's not to say that what you're doing is wrong, but I think the message here is tune back into your intuition and what it's saying to you, and going after the things that really bring you joy and just light you up. Because when you raise your own vibration, you raise the vibration of everyone around you. And then in turn, that helps reverberate out and help make this world a better place.
Absolutely. I love that. So back to the evolution of Hey Boo. So there was Thrive, and you and I were together in that realm. That was like in 2020 during the lockdown.
It was.
Yeah.
It was. And I have to say, it was my saving grace. I'm sure it was for you, because in a time where you feel like you were disconnected from the world, I was actually talking more to people, our group, than I was before. I had a more just meaningful, deeper connection with a group of people that were all seeking betterment and awareness. So for me, I was thriving. I was starting to thrive. I was uncovering a part of myself that had laid dormant for so long. And so for that, I am so grateful. But I do want to just pay tribute also to the wonderful workshops that you had even before that, because it was also very revealing to me about my path and where I'm going, and taught me that this isn't just a three-dimensional world. There's so much more to it. And the way I've always liked to relay spirituality to other people is, to me, the analogy, it's like Wi-Fi, right? You know it works, but you can't see it, right? And to me,
Right.
that's what connection to spirit is. So even though I'd have all these crazy stories I'd share about my dad communicating with me in my home through lights, through the fan, through various ways that we'll share on this podcast, I wanted to just be a better communicator with him. And that's why I was so invested in these workshops with Meika. And I had profound just revelations and developments and uncovering abilities I had no idea. I started seeing the visions and sort of just, it's so subtle. So, being able to talk about that and not really knowing that there was a name for it, or that, really truly everybody has some degree of capability. It's just a matter of what yours is and paying attention to it. So I think, as we go through the course of this podcast, I'm sure Meek will share some of her wonderful exercises and tuning into the different clairs. I think that's really fascinating. It was very helpful for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it just really still surprises me how all of that took place. At the time that I was getting ready to quit my job, and that would, like, my intuition was so strong, I was taking classes from one of my mentors on mediumship. And she said, I didn't tell her anything about wanting to quit my job. We were in class, and she said, Meika, you would be a good teacher of this. And if you want, I will hand you my beginning students. And I was like, oh, like, I'm still a student. There's no way. I could teach this. I could do that. She's like, you can do that. You can do that. And I just feel like when things, at least this is how it's shown up in my life, when you're in alignment with your purpose and your gifts and your magic, things just start to flow. Doors just start to open. And that's what happened with those classes. And so I stepped into the role of teacher when I did not feel it at all. I was
You
like,
would never guess, Meika. You're
the student. I was
incredible.
so scared. But then, as more and more classes that I did, I was like, okay, it was so good for me, because I really began to really trust my gifts. And it's like, you have to, especially when you're in the teaching realm, you really have to, you just have to say, this is it. I know this. And so there was no wavering, because you can't waver when you're teaching it. And so it like, stepping into that role allowed me to trust in the intuition, and trust in the messages, and trust in, that the mediumship skills that were coming out. So I learned so much from teaching those classes. God, so much.
I just realized the connection. You came from the educational world. And so we talk about how everything in your life is intentional, whether you have that 9-to-5 job or whatever it is, it's like a stepping stone to where you need to be. So you had this space in your life where you were an educator, and look at how, like, the tuning fork was just pushing you in the direction that you needed to be in. So you're still a teacher.
Yeah,
Very much
absolutely.
so.
I think our purpose, like our life's purpose, I feel like, people go, oh, I want to know, it's like they relate it to a specific career. And once you're in that career, that's your life's purpose. But I really feel like our life's purpose, like, there's, like, if you just look at, like, connect the dots of your life, you'll see a certain thread, a certain through line that runs through everything. And one of the through lines for me is the role of a teacher. And so, yeah, like you said, it's sort of a natural, like, I had to learn, and I had to be working with, it was really very, like, in the spiritual realm with the kids that I was working with, because I was working with, like, high functioning autistic children, or children with autism. And those little beings are magic. I think they're human evolution, like, in
No
the
doubt.
making. They're
Boot
just like
tingles. Yeah.
these little light workers. And I think we
Are.
need to have a show on the kids who are coming in, the light worker children who are coming in, because they are,
No doubt. No
they're
doubt.
incredible.
I mean, we could speak to just even the generation, despite wherever, kids fall on sort of that scale. But, like, I know we both have children that are very deeply connected, and it feels very mature
Yes.
in spirituality for where they are in life and their physical being, and the things that, at least I've heard from my own son. Sometimes like my mouth is gaping open because I'm like, how could you say that? Like, you haven't been here that long, So in
Right.
a lot of ways, he's definitely my teacher. And I don't look at how long you've been on this world as any indication of your wisdom. It's all tied back to your soul and your spirit.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. I remember Kainoa, like I was in a space where I was just really overwhelmed. I had like a toddler, a little baby, and I was working full time and I was super overwhelmed. I was like coping. I was, drinking a little too much, just doing things that just were not at my highest, just to try and like cope. And I remember I knew there were certain things that I was doing that I just knew were not in my highest. And Kainoa could barely talk. And he grabs my face and he'd go, wake up, wake up, wake up. And I
Oh my
knew
gosh.
what he was talking about. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry, honey. I'm getting there. I'm getting there. And I just knew, I'm like, oh gosh, this little being, like he's so aware. He's so aware of, I mean, he's just calling me out. He calls
Yeah,
me out when
same,
I'm not in alignment. He's like,
same.
snap to it, lady.
Right. That's incredible. What a beautiful moment. It
Yeah.
reminds me, like, Bodhi, I think, was, I don't know, maybe 2.5. We're pushing him in this. He's small enough where we were still pushing him in a stroller. And look, all we were watching was like Paw Patrol, Bubble Guppies, like nothing deep or spiritual. We're just walking out of nowhere. Life is life. The earth is lighter and darker. And I'm like,
I just got goals.
I'm sorry, what? Like, and in his little, toddler voice. And I'm like, noted. Also very true. And, and there's just these things that just pop up out of nowhere where you're like, God damn, that's so deep. And, one of the last things that stayed with me that I have to share, we were on a hike in Tahoe. It was an intense hike for a 5-year-old, but he muscled through and he enjoyed it. I love that we've created this love for nature. It's just one of the things that we love to do on the weekends. But anyways, we're going on this intense hike. It's the Shirley Trail hike in I think it's like around the Truckee area. And we're in the hike for a few hours. And I think we're coasting back at this point. And he said so clearly, I pulled my phone out after it because I'm like, I can't believe he just said this. He said, the soul activates the heart.
Oh. Ooh.
And I go, what did you just say? And I'm like, what did you just say? Era of phones. And he goes, the soul activates the heart. And I'm like, soul activates that. You're right.
Oh,
it does.
You're right. But,
but I'm like, where did you get that? Like,
exactly. Oh, it's just amazing. They're beyond. Yeah. Okay. So I have two things I want to share on that. So another one with Kainoa, he still was like, he was speaking in sentences, but he was so little. 2-3 years old, and he's splashing around in this beautiful creek by my parents' house. And it was just the two of us. And he looks over and he said, Mom, is this life real or a dream? And I was like, well, that's a really good question. And I said, what do you think? What do you think? And he goes, well, I love you, and that's real. So part of it has to be real. And I was like, oh my God, what little tiny person's like thinking of those like profound questions,
So beautiful. So beautiful.
Yeah. And then Coco, my youngest one, he was like, he came in like a dancer, like you'd appreciate that. But he I looked over in his hike chair and I had some like kind of rappy kind of music going. And he was so on beat with it. I was like, oh my God, it was the first time I was like, whoa, that kid has rhythm. And so when he got a little older and could talk, I was watching him dance and I said, how'd you get to be such a good dancer? And he thought about it and he goes, well, I listened to my heart laughing.
Oh
and
my
I was
gosh.
like, oh, I get it. That's the beat. That's your heart. And it's laughing and it's having fun. I'm like, oh,
that needs to be on a t-shirt. I listen to my heart laugh. I love that.
I know.
How beautiful.
I know. Those little beings. And I'm sure that the people, our little witches out there have most likely experienced things with your own children or people
Absolutely.
in your family, because there's just so many kids who are coming in like that.
And we'd love to hear it. Share in the comments. or,
Yeah,
reach out.
absolutely.
We would love to have you on the show so that you can share your story.
Yes, we want to hear about the crystal children, the rainbow children, the indigos. I think I have an indigo. I think Kainoa is an indigo because he
Explain to
came.
everyone what an indigo child is.
So an indigo child is, and I'm sure there's people who know a lot more about this, but from what I've studied, an indigo in the indigos are the ones who come in with the consciousness of I'm gonna buck the system. The things that are not working, I'm gonna call you out and we're gonna fix it. So they come in with that kind of attitude. Like they're like, no bullshit. Like we're here to do light work and you better get with the program. Right. So they're
Wake
like,
up, mom.
exactly. Wake up. So they're like the like authority. No, I think Kainoa is that. And it's funny to watch his evolution because when he was a youngster, he was really like that. And he's like softened so much. And I don't ever want him to lose that part of himself, you know? So, because I can see him quieting that part, to fit in. And I'm always reminding him that it's okay to like speak up and speak his truth, and he does it at home quite well, but
Right.
out in the world, I think that maybe most kids go through that where they're trying to fit in and not necessarily be the disruptor, but I feel like that's he came in to really like clean things up.
So special.
Yeah, and then Coco, I feel, is a crystal, and crystal kids are just they're just like pure love. They're I mean all kids are pure love, but there's just this higher intelligence of love. It's like everything is filtered through love. They're just like they're the heart, and like a lot like some signs of being a crystal kid, like a lot of crystals are fruitarians. Like if like Coco, that was all he wanted to eat was fruit, and it's just like that lightness, that sweetness,
High
just like
vibrational food.
yes,
Yep.
exactly. And so he really needs to eat clean, and he doesn't want to at this point in time, he doesn't want to. And that's a hard balance because I know what it does to his system to not be like that. Yeah. And then there's rainbows, which I don't know too much about. In 2020, I don't even know how we got connected with these amazing light worker beings, but Kaleo and I did this meditation with these people that we met online. And I don't even know how we got there, but I saw the earth and I saw the new kids that are coming down. They were like children of the sun. That's what I want to call them. I don't know what they're called, but I want to call them children of the sun. They were just radiant. And I came out of that meditation and I was like, oh, wow. Like we really are going to create heaven on earth. Like these new beings are just like,
Cosmic.
we're shifting. We're
Yeah.
shifting this program, people. Like through love, they were just so light and just like being, I had never experienced a being like that before. So I was like, oh, we're in for a treat. We're in for a treat with this next generation.
I love it. In my conversations with Meika constantly, I'm always getting these tingles. We're calling them boo tingles now because of our podcast. But what I like to address though is that these tingles for me represent the truth and the authenticity and the realness and what is being shared. And for me, that's always been secondary physical reaction I get when I hear something, when someone telling something that's very real to them. So
I'm getting it right now.
I just wanted to share, because we will say I'm getting my boot tingles a lot, just to put out there what that means. I'm sure it can be interpreted different ways. So
yeah, I have the same experience. It comes from clairsentience, and I think a lot of people with clairsentience have those boo tingles. And like you said, I get this. It's the same thing for me when someone is speaking truth or something comes out of my mouth that is truth and I need to elaborate on more. I get the tingles like all over, like, okay, either listen up. It's time to really listen. Like that person is really speaking the truth, or you need to keep going with your truth.
Absolutely.
It's really cool.
Yeah. And the other time I get that sensation is when somebody is mentioned a loved one who's passed. It almost feels like I'm a little bit of a tuning fork for like dead people. I'm like, ooh, are they here? What is this? I don't know if you've got that sensation before, if that's just my thing.
Yeah. I don't know that I get it with people who have passed. I'm not aware of that. I maybe sometimes, but that reminds me, I want to share with you about when I went to the haunted hotel the other week.
Yes,
So
yes. I've been
we can do that in
dying
a
to
minute.
hear about this. Yeah, but I'm curious, because I know that you're also a connector with spirit and like past lives. What is your experience when you're connecting? Because I have to share very quickly that there was something that I was struggling with within the family, and I was looking for answers. And so actually the first time we met was a reading with you, and
Yeah.
the way in which you had connected with my grandfather in particular, like, blew my mind, because of course we never met. We had a mutual friend, but like Meika wouldn't know that my grandfather, moved around in an electric wheelchair, and she like saw the electric wheelchair, and she was sharing things that I'm like, God damn, like you like nailed it with
Mm.
your description of him and what he sounded like. And it was so reassuring and comforting, to have had that message come through you. So I guess my question is, when you are connecting in that way with physical beings who have passed on and now are in the spiritual realm, like, what does that feel like to you? And what does it feel like to have those downloads?
It feels like I'm making it up usually.
Right.
And I want everyone to know that I would teach this, I would be in class, and everyone's like, I don't know, I feel like I'm making it up. And until you run it past somebody, then they go, yes, that's your confirmation. So it always feels, it never like, and if you watch a really good medium too, I swear they're all really surprised when the person goes, yes, like you can see it. They're like, yes, like, because it feels like that. So my experience, it seems like I would have more body stuff happen, but I don't actually. Like mine is very visual, and visual in such a way that when I thought about mediumship, I thought once you get really good at mediumship, like you're just going to see the person so clearly, everything is just going to be like the person's in the room with you, and it's not that way. And I don't know really any mediums who experience it like that. You just have to trust however it is coming in for you. But for me, it's like I've been told by one of my mentors, don't close your eyes. I close my eyes. Like that's just how I see best when I close my eyes.
I do too.
And what I see is these like really faint pictures, and sometimes I'll see like a full story. That's when I'm seeing a past life. When I see past lives, I see like a full, like not a full story, but like a full image of like what's happening, what's going on, what, was the person a queen who was beheaded, or, I'll get like really clear things like that when it's a past life. If it's a person who's crossed over, I usually see a picture and I get these little just faint pictures that come in where I'm like, okay, is that a man in a wheelchair? Or, and so it almost feels like I'm kind of guessing, but I have to say it out loud.
Yeah.
And so it's for me when I connect with spirit and people on the other side, it's almost always visual. And it also comes in as like claircognizant, like a knowing, like it's like, okay, you have to say this out loud. You have to, like, even though I could be second guessing it, it comes in like, yep. Like there's certain things that are yes. Like I remember connecting with a mom whose daughter had transitioned, and it was, oh gosh, it was like, that was one of the strongest knowings I've ever had. Like before, like I got her daughter before we actually had the reading, and I got her and I wrote it all down. And it was like, I knew 100%, that one, I knew. I was like, I know this, like, I don't really even have to run it past her. I know who this is. But for the most part, it feels like you're just sort of guessing and making it up a little bit. Like, is this real? Is it my imagination? But that's where you connect, in that imaginative realm. It's like spirit will impress upon your imagination. And so it does feel like that. But
Right.
it's, when you check in with the person, you're like, oh my God, that's actually accurate.
And you know what was profound to me was, I always thought I was obviously very clear, sentient feeling, as I talk about my tingles, and clear, cognizant and knowing also, but how these clairs can also develop. Like I had never seen these impressions that you're talking about until I took your workshops. And just like everything else in life, the more you do it, the more familiar and comfortable you get with it. And I can't help but share that story about, one of the workshops you had, and me seeing a panda on a tricycle or a bicycle. And I'm like, God, that's so random. I'm like, what is this? And I'm like, did I watch a cartoon with my son that had a panda on a bicycle? Because that's very specific, right? Like you don't that's not a normal image that you would catch anywhere. And so when I said it out loud, what I found with like the things that I've seen, it'll hit in different ways to multiple people, or
Yes.
they come in pairs almost. And so
Yes.
in that instance, there was a connection with you,
Mhm.
and there was a connection with another woman there.
Yep.
Uh, was there a third there? Anyways, there was a woman who said that on the way to the workshop, her daughter was driving the car, and like she carries a stuffed panda bear around with her everywhere. She made a comment about how she'd love to ride her bike on Abbot Kinney one day because she could see all the people going up and down and it looked fun. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's a crazy mention of something that they had in a very private conversation on the way over. I'm not sure if that's the same woman that also had a connection. No, there's
No.
like a it was
Yeah.
so if you want to share how it connected to you, and then this other
It connected with myself and Elise. We both looked at each other like, okay, because both of my kids and both of her kids actually were diagnosed with something called pandas, and it can be a very challenging issue for a lot of kids, and it was something that was new to us, and we were discovering how to heal our kids. And so we looked at each other when you said that. We're like, oh my God, okay, we get it. Okay, this is real. Because I was going like, okay, do they have it? Do they not? Because it's like an autoimmune disease that attacks the brain, and it's very hard to diagnose. And with my kids, it's very subtle, thank God, because some kids have it and it's very severe. And so we were both trying to figure out like, is this something? And then when you said pandas, we both looked at each other like, okay, we get
there's
it.
like a confirmation of what
Confirmation.
you were, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Incredible. Tell me about what happened. Oh, I guess, sorry, we totally like deviated from how this came to be. We'll share that. And then I really am dying to hear about your last trip because like we've been holding
we could
on.
go on forever. We could probably
we're going to chop this episode up into like 12.
Right. Exactly.
But anyways, what I want to mention, so after going through Thrive Integration Program for, I feel like it was a better part of 2020, one of the hits I get, and I think one of my gifts, is being able to very clearly see what someone's purpose should be, or what they should be working towards, or, you know, it's just very obvious to me when I get to know someone. It's like a knowing. And I remember getting through the program and telling you guys, even, and Kaleo, like, you guys need to culminate this in a journey. This needs to culminate in a plant journey.
Like crying because you're the one who like you connected us to the house where our first journey was.
I'm also a manifestor. I'm like, this has to happen. I was like, here is the beautiful place to have it too. Like, I was like rolling out the red carpet practically.
Totally. Like, oh, what a magical space that was. What a magical space that
gorgeous.
was. But
I just have to say that place has ruined me because I'm like, dream home. Like I would move there in a heartbeat, man. But what a beautiful, beautiful place in Ojai that we had. What a beautiful sacred space on that land, the tree, the nature. It was all so gorgeous. And to be guided by you both, you know, Meika and Kaleo are incredible in holding space and guiding and just feeling so safe. And that's the exact environment that you want when you're healing. And so it's all about setting and who's around you. And yeah, so I've now, I guess, been with you guys a few times. Yeah, more than a few. And so the last one we had was in August. I think, you know, we were touching on this in the beginning of the episode here, but not to get too graphic or whatever, but I was like in the ladies' room and I'm sitting there and like in the loudest internal voice I've ever heard in my life, it was like, you and Meika were witches together. And I'm like, we were. I was like, it was so loud in my head. And I remember coming out of the bathroom and I remember hearing you had like taken Mango, ceremony dog, outside for a leaf. And I poked my head around the corner to make sure you weren't in the living room. And I went straight outside and I opened the door and I said, Meika, we were, and you finished my sentence.
We said it together too.
We did say it together.
Are you ready? You want to say it together?
I said, Meika, we were
witches together.
And I was like, it was like, I gasped because I'm like, how did you know I was going to say that?
It was so weird because I didn't know I was going to say it. It was the weirdest thing, Kristen. Like I turned around, I looked at you and it literally like, it came out of my mouth. We were witches together. I didn't think, I just looked at you and it was like, in unison. That, I mean, we said it at the exact
We
same
did.
time.
It was
We were witches together.
It was fucking cosmic. Anyway, I'm feeling it again, like sort of like the vibration of that moment, because in a way for me, it felt like we were coming together again after like many lives or something. Like
Totally.
I just found my sister, my and I
totally.
want to share that like a big part of why we're doing this is because there's just this need to dispel the vibration that has been assigned to the word witch. Like everybody feels it. You think it's a negative thing, but this is all stemming from the patriarchy, right? Like a woman's intuition, you can't fuck around with. Like this is like the strongest thing in the world. And it is very, what's the word? Not alarming, but like for a man who might not have this capability, or someone who is afraid of it, or they don't have it, feeling like it could take away their own power, needing to apply this connotation on it.
The word witch has been so demonized in
Right.
a way.
Thank
And
you.
when witches were the healers. They were the healers. They were the magic ones. They were the medicine women. They were the people, the wise ones. And that's, through this podcast, that's what we really want to heal. We want to heal the word witch. We want for all of the witches, all of the magical people, all of the healers to come out and unite and come together and really feel your magic and feel your power. Because I really think that so many of us have been way showers and have been witches and have been healers and have been shamans throughout our lifetimes. And so many of us have been persecuted. And so we come in with that past life energetic signature. We come in this life, we feel like afraid to show our magic and afraid of the word witch because of how it's been demonized. And so that's the call. That's really why we're doing this podcast, is to call out all the magic folk, all of the witches, all of the shamans, all the healers.
Yes, it's light work. It's not dark. It's light. It's love. It's healing.
Exactly.
It's healing. The attributes of a witch have taken a different nomenclature. So if you're an herbologist, that was a witch. Knowing what plants of the earth heal you. These are, or nature if you're right, a spellcaster, you're a manifestor. Like there are
exactly.
I feel like they've had to evolve into different words, because the word witch, it was an insult, and it's not.
Right.
My God, it's such a gift. It's like a gift, and everybody has their own witchy ways, and you know it because you feel it, and maybe you've felt weird about it, or you don't know what kind of name to put it. But this is why we're here. We're here to activate the modern day coven.
Yes.
To reignite your light.
Yes. So if you out there listening feel that call, you feel like, yes, thank you. Let's come together. You are a witch, you are a magic person, and maybe you've been kind of hiding your magic a little bit. Comment below. We want to hear from you. We want to connect. We want to, like Kristen said, bring the coven. We're getting the band back together. We're getting the coven back together. We have to do this. It's time. And it's safe. That's what I really like. I work with a lot of people, and I do, Kaleo and I, my husband, do a lot of quantum energy healings. I find that I work with so many people who don't feel safe in this world to be magical and to be in their power, because their power, like I said, in past lives have been just stripped and ridiculed. And so it's safe. It's safe to come out and play like this. This is the lifetime to do it.
Yep. And look, this might not be for everybody, but if you're called to it, this is for you, right? I mean, there are people who are very, very stuck in a perception of what life is and how you should live it. But I would have to ask those people, like, how authentic do you feel? Are you happy? Do you feel seen? And even just to plant the seed that there's different ways of looking at your human experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to share something really cool, because I love this. And it was something that I didn't know growing up, but I was born, there's 8 witches' Sabbats, and I was born on a witches' Sabbat, March 21st, which is Ostara. And so it was a celebration of the meeting of the balance of the light and the dark. And my mom was also born on a witch's Sabbat, Imbolc, which represents the middle point of winter. It's so fitting for my mom and I, because she's a magical witch. She's got so much power. And part of her journey is to learn to be with the darkness. And it's been challenging for her, but she helps people too. And she almost takes the darkness from people. And so it's really interesting. I got to be like where the dark and the light meet. So it's like the emerging of the light.
Wow.
And so it's just such a cool thing because hers is right before me. So it's like this natural progression from mother to daughter. I just think it's just so cool. I was reading more about it today. I'm like, that's really effing awesome. Yeah, I just love that. I love that. And Halloween is a witch's Sabbath as well. And Halloween is that, of course, where the veil is the thinnest. And so it marks the new witch's calendar. And I had this dream. It's such it wasn't random, but at the time I'm like, why would I have a dream about pumpkins? Like it was like such a clear dream about pumpkins. And what I was told in the dream was pumpkins represent the cyclical nature of life. And I woke up and I wrote it down. I still have it in my journal. Those pumpkins represent the cyclical nature of life. And so I was thinking about that this morning, being that Halloween is upon us, and thinking, of course, because pumpkins are, I mean, that's just a symbol of Halloween, the witch's Sabbath, right? And that's the mark of their calendar. And what the Sabbaths are representing, they're representing the different cycles of nature. So it just makes sense that pumpkins represent that cyclical nature of life. And I was kind of like connecting the dots today with Halloween. I'm like, oh, this is really amazing. Cool. Yeah.
So how did you stumble upon the Sabbaths? Like, how do you know what all the dates are, and how did that information come to you?
I've always called myself a witch. Like I always have, even when I was little, like I have pictures of myself, like maybe 2 and 3 years old. And I have like a witch mask and I'm like sitting there like with my arm around it. And I just always called myself a witch. And I was always attracted to anything witch. I remember going into bookstores and I didn't want people to see me in the occult section. Like I'd kind of hide, but I'd pull out like all of these witchcraft books and I'd buy them, or I'd have my mom buy them. And so I was just always like, I remember the Modern Witches spell book was one that I bought, and I'd invite my friends over and we'd do spells. And it was just, I just have always related to myself as a witch. And then, and when I got into college, I started just kind of studying a little bit more. And I think, God, of course, I'm going to take this class, but I took an anthropology class, magic, religion, and witchcraft. And I met some very interesting people who were witches in that class. And so I think just through information and exchanging it, just, someone was saying like, do you know about the witches' Sabbaths? And so I was like, oh, let me check that out. And so I, did a little research. I'm like, oh my God, I was born on one. Oh my God, my mom was born on one. And the crazy thing is Kaleo's mom was born on one too. Wow. I'm like, ooh, we're surrounded.
There are no coincidences.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Do you know the rest of the dates by heart, or maybe we could share that in the description of this?
Yeah, we can share it. I mean, I know a lot of them. A lot of them are like kind of the obvious ones, but we'll share it in the description because we'll give you the correct details.
Yeah, I'm intrigued. I'd love to know. That's new information for me. So back to how this came to be, we were actually telling ghost stories in Meika and Kaleo's kitchen. And man, they are going to come up on this podcast because they're so fascinating and engaging. The concept of the name of this podcast, Hey Boo.
I remember.
Yeah, I remember. It came out. I'm like, we need to share this on a podcast. Like these stories are so profound and cool, and like you can't make them up. And so that's sort of how it came to be. Just a series of moments in our last ceremony together during the summer, just looking at how all the different branches of this could work and how much information we could share and how we could collaborate and learn more, reveal all the wisdom and the medicine and everything that I feel like has been oppressed. And it's time to reactivate and to share the information and help other people evolve and grow and feel good in who they are and share that gift with everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, that's why I'm so excited about doing this, because there's so much to learn in the realm of healing, in the realm of magic, in the realm of witchcraft. I mean, there's so much. We can just have so many amazing people. And I'm sure the listeners have amazing stories to tell as well. So I encourage people to share your magic. Share your magic. We want to hear it.
Absolutely. I wanted to share though, when we first got on this call, I've never done my hair this way, where I've just like pulled the side back and I get on the Zoom with Meika and I'm like, shut up. The same hairstyle. It was like, excuse me, right before jumping on the call, I just felt this like you need to pull the side of your hair back. I'm like, okay. So it was like, it tickled me a little bit to see you.
Following that into intuition.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
love it. I love
Yeah.
it. I was going to say, how did you know you were a witch?
Well, on the toilet in your bathroom. For sure. It was like super loud, but see, there's a couple things I want to mention. One of my first costumes as a little girl was a purple witch. And I'm kind of now wondering what the color lavender or purple signifies, because that has actually been a very dominant color in my life.
It's one of the highest vibrational colors. So it's like connection with spirit. It's like the seventh chakra is purple. So it's the connection with spirit. Like if you notice a lot of spiritual places will use the color purple for that
Yeah,
reason.
it is like, and it's just funny to me because I didn't think about that until you were talking about you as a little girl. Like that memory hadn't activated until you shared that. Now I need to see if I can try and find that photo. But I was probably 5 and my mom made me the biggest witch's cone and like
It's so
this
awesome.
gown. And I don't know. I mean, maybe I asked for that. I don't remember when you're that age, but that's a very specific. It wasn't like the traditional black witch outfit. It was purple.
Yeah.
So, there's that, you see these little things as like you make connections looking back. But I would say, I don't know that in my mind I defined it as witchery or whatever, but I knew that there was like this deep knowing and understanding growing up, like just knowing things. And I actually, my husband knows this, Zach, that if I know something, I'm like, don't even argue with me about it. Like this is happening. Like this is so he knows already. Like I'm 99.9% right all the time.
I love it. That's why I was like, we're doing this podcast because I know that about you too. I'm like, this is happening.
Yeah.
This is happening. Kristen says it, we're doing it.
Yeah, here we are. Yeah. And just knowing information. I've definitely, God forbid this ever reaches anyone I've ever dated, but like I would really scare this out of boyfriends because I would know things and I would call them out on it. And like the faces they would be like, how did you know that? And I'm like,
oh, I love it.
Which, by the way, I have to share this story coming off of our last ceremony because it was also one of those moments where it's inexplicable, but it's real, right? So I remember just having so many downloads after our last gathering. So I took a beach chair, I took my journal, I went down to the ocean. I live in Santa Monica where Meika used to live as well. I sat and I journaled for an hour and so much was coming through. It felt so good to script. And when I was done, I pack up and it's just a beautiful day in Santa Monica as it is most days. But I look down and I see these white goggles in the surf of the ocean. I'm compelled to pick them up. One, because I hate litter. It like eats away at my soul if I even step over something at the beach. Like I just feel like a bad person. So I pick them up and I'm like, God, maybe someone could use these. I'll put it on the bench before I leave the beach. Maybe someone will take it. I'm like near the pier and I'm walking maybe, I don't know, gosh, it's like a quarter of a mile back to the pathway to get back to where I live. And I'm walking and I just stop. And there's a woman standing in front of me with a boogie board. And I see like a young boy out in the surf with a boogie board. And I stop her and I say, is he with you? She goes, yeah. And I hold up the goggles and she goes, oh my God. She's like, how did you know? How did you know those are his? Because like they had floated, I guess, like I said, I just walked, I don't know, like, and my intuition to be like, these are yours. And
oh my God.
she's like, how did you know? And I didn't know what to say. I mean, in my mind, I wanted to say, because I'm a witch.
Right.
And I was standing there and I was like, just blank face. That is so trippy and so weird. But I gave them to her and I'm just walking away in disbelief myself. I mean, she's like totally floored. And I can just hear the wind carrying her voice saying, how did you know?
Oh my God.
Hysterical. Yeah.
I love that. And anybody listening, if you've had those moments, put it in the comments. We want to know. We want to know those moments of that like clear cognizance or that's something where it's just like, what, no one would ever know that. That makes absolutely no sense, but it just is so, right? So let us know. Let us know. We want to hear your stories.
Like I said earlier, I mean, there are no such things as coincidence. Everything is synchronistic. So when you're like, oh, that's so crazy that happened at the same time, it's not. It was meant for you.
Right. Exactly. Oh, I love it.
This is like part of the magic we want to share on this podcast and to hear other stories and to just relay all these beautiful experiences we've had and share what knowledge we have and have experts come on and speak on things that we have the thirst to understand better.
Yes, 100%.
I do want to go back to, because I'm dying to hear this trip you went on. Was it Utah?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So we had some friends getting married. We had the hotel that we were staying at for 2 nights where they were having their wedding. But when we flew in, we were flying in late and we were like, we hadn't booked a hotel. So we're like, we'll just catch some cheapo thing. It's just a place to lay our heads down. before we go to our like really fancy hotel. So we're driving and I'm looking up on hotels tonight, seeing what's available. And as I'm looking on my phone, I just glance up and there's this giant semi truck and the word across it is Shaffer. And I was like,
which is my last name,
which is Kristen's last name. And I was like, I've never seen a truck with that name. And I was like, I wonder why. I'm like, I wonder why, but it just was like so weird to me. And I was like, okay. And I turned to Cleo and I said, I think this is going to be a really magical trip. I'm like, I'm not exactly sure I know we think we're going for a wedding, but I think we might be going for some other reason too. So get back on my phone, hotels tonight. I see this like normally $400 hotel. And it's like, it's the last minute. So it was like 200. And I was like, ooh, let's do that one. Click. And so I bought it. And then I was like, oh, you know what? I better like, let me look at where we're going. Like it looked nice, just from the pictures, but I was like, let me know a little bit more about it. So I start reading. It's Utah's most haunted hotel. I'm like, of course. I'm like, here we go. We're talking about doing the Hey Boo podcast. And here we go with another ghost story. So we get there and you could just feel, you could feel the haunt in the place. It was visceral. Cleo was like, do you feel anything? I'm like, how can you not? So we go to our room, we go out to dinner that night and we come back. Okay. So I didn't know exactly what the hauntings were. Like we just kind of got in there. They said, yes, this is a haunted hotel. They said the elevator's haunted and you don't want to go downstairs. So we went downstairs and it feels so eerie and just thick with kind of mischievous spirit is what it felt like.
Like where was the lot? Like if it's the layout of the hotel. So what was downstairs?
So the lobby is just this beautiful, it's like almost like 1920s kind of a feel. It was like a really old hotel. I think it was built in 1910, but they did it in kind of that 20s style. It was gorgeous. But you go downstairs and it was like a spooky office. And I actually think the gym was downstairs too. But it felt, you just wanted to get out of there. Like as soon as you got down there, you wanted to get out. So that night, I'm laying in bed and Kaleo's like filming. He's like filming me going through the thing. What do you feel? Da, da, da. And I was just kind of talking and saying like what I felt. And so I didn't do like a protection, which I don't know, maybe I should have, but I didn't do a protection around me before I went to bed. I probably, cause I was kind of curious about like what was there. And a lot of times spirits will come to me in that in-between space when you're not quite asleep. I think a lot of mediums have this because you have the ability to go into the spirit realm. And I think that when you're in sleep, like this is how I experience it. So you're in sleep, I'm asleep in my bed, but all of a sudden I'm awake, but I'm in a different dimension. Like I can see the bed, everything looks the same, but everything feels different. Like my body is asleep, but my consciousness and my spirit is in the other realm. And so that what was happening. Like I was seeing from the perspective of me laying down, but I knew my body was asleep, but I was there and I just heard Meika, and I could feel like this pulling and tugging and it's happened a lot in the past. So I'm feeling this pull, tug. And I always call in Archangel Michael. I always call him Archangel Michael on that because I'll tell you the story about how I got to that. But I was like, okay, Archangel Michael, come on in. I'm like, come on in. I'm like, oh, and I'm just like trying to pull myself back into my body and awake. And so I did, boom, and I'm awake. And so I'm totally awake. I'm like, okay. Cleo's just lying there peacefully sleeping.
I was about to ask, is he like sound asleep?
Yeah, I know. He's just snoozing away. And I'm like, oh God, like we have a wedding tomorrow. I'm like, I really don't want to be bothered by the spirits right now. So I did like a little protection around me. Right as I was about to go back into sleep, the bed shook. And I was like, all right, like, I guess I'm not going to sleep right now. So then, now granted, we are in a hotel, but I was hearing like running down the hallway, like awake, like, and I was like, but I didn't hear any doors opening and closing, and I didn't hear anybody talking. And I was like, okay. And then when I woke up in the morning, I was reading about what the hauntings were. And they said that a lot of people hear children, like footsteps running up and down. I was like, I definitely heard them that night. So it was an amazing experience. I didn't get a lot of sleep at all. And I was very tired the next day for the wedding.
Do you ever ask, like, what do you want? Or, I mean, in those moments, because sometimes in hindsight, I'm like, why didn't I just ask them what they want? Like, why are you bothering me right now?
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I have so many stories about that as well. But when I was laying there, it brought a question to my mind, like, what is a ghost? What is a ghost? Because, people have a lot of different theories. Some people say, oh, well, a ghost is, you get, a lot of times when tragedy happens, you don't, it's unexpected, or, I mean, isn't death usually unexpected, but it's, it's so traumatic that the soul gets trapped. They get trapped. And I have a hard time believing that totally, because I believe in a loving and kind universe. And unless your soul has made that agreement as like a learning opportunity, you need to experience what it's like to feel trapped in this dimension in order for your soul to grow. I could see it from that perspective. But then I was laying there and a thought came in, and I don't know if this is accurate or not, but I was asking my guide, what is it? And what I got, which is what I got, it doesn't mean that it's truth, but it's what I got, is that it's a fragment of the soul. It's not the totality. So the soul can cross over, and, you could pass away. You're still in the next realm, and, in back with the love. There's a piece that's like attached to fear, grief, agony, anger that is still there.
Like something that's unresolved?
Yes, like an imprint. Some sort of it's so strong at the time of death that energetic signature imprints into the space. But it doesn't mean that the whole soul is there. And I thought, that's interesting. I like that version. I like that. Because I feel like there could be soul retrieval, and you can maybe you're in that space to learn. But I've also helped people cross over, and they felt maybe like I'm like, okay, was that their full spirit? Could that have been a fragmented part of their spirit? Maybe. So, I was kind of grappling with that, because I don't know that anybody has like a definitive answer on what that is, but I just thought it was just kind of a new perspective that I hadn't thought about before, when I was just kind of asking, like, intuitively, like, inner guidance, what is it? What's a spirit?
I also don't think that a spirit has to be traumatized in a way to stay, because my dad is definitely around me. So, to what degree is he just floating around, just making sure everything's okay? And like, at what point would he transition to the next life, or how that works? Like, I'm endlessly fascinated with that aspect of spirit.
Yes. Well, I feel like people, our loved ones who cross over, they're not trapped. They're still around us for sure. My curiosity was in haunted places, like places that are haunted, like, like your dad's not going around like spooky people or what, but like, what is that? Why are there places that, like, you can feel it? You can feel
it's almost like when there's someone had just had a fight in a room, and you can feel the tension. It's energy. It's energy. That's where that phrase, you can cut the tension with a knife, comes from, because it's like energetic imprint of even a living person in space. And
just got the boot tingles. Yes, totally. And that makes sense. I mean, sometimes there's definitely lighter feels to, like, lighter versions of the part of the soul that's still there, or the energetic imprint, or whatever it is. But mostly when you go into a haunted place, it's kind of there's a bit of a darker
damp. It's heavy.
Yeah, it's heavy, and they
feel like a weighted blanket,
murder or suicide, or you know what I mean? Like, there's something that happens that's a little more traumatic, usually in places that are haunted, that I just find so fascinating.
Yeah.
Just such an interesting thing.
Yeah. I feel like in my experience, when I felt that kind of energy you're speaking of, it feels frenetic, just unsettled, and almost like a ball of energy that doesn't know what to do with itself, rattling things and moving and doing things that, like, freak people out that have a body right now.
Don't I know? I lived in a haunted house. It was quite a year.
This was your college experience, right?
Yes.
Do we want to save this for the next episode, or do you want to?
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. I mean, we could rattle off stories all day, Kristen.
As we wrap up this episode, Meika, which has been so fun, I can't wait to keep going. Halloween is upon us, and I have a dumb dad joke that I just have to end our first episode with. Why do people not like eating ghosts?
Why?
Because they taste like sheep.
Ah!
With that being said, our next episode will dive right into our most memorable ghost stories we've experienced in our pasts, and also maybe an opportunity to get to hear from people that have had experiences too that they'd like to share that we can have on eventually as guests.
Yes. So tune in for our next episode on our best ghost stories. It's going to be so much fun. Thank you, everybody, for flying with us today and creating magic together.
Later, booze.